All right, y'all know I'm about to go off. This is the most ridiculous nonsense. And I'm not just talking about Trump. I'm talking about the way that the media is dealing with this. If Donald Trump were black, the very first word used to describe him would be thug. Let's just start with that. The fact that we're talking about locker room banter, what locker room you in? I don't know no locker. First of all, Donald Trump has not been in a locker room or a gym for at least 30 years. So he cannot blame the locker room on anything. Donald Trump, if he were black, the number one thing you'd be saying about Donald Trump is that he is a thug. Number two, let's just be really clear. Donald Trump has confessed to a sex crime. I want to be very clear about that. When black people do stuff, we quickly rush to criminality. When white people do stuff, it's like, okay, well, this is frat boy behavior. When it's us, it's thuggish behavior, frat boy behavior, locker room behavior. What are you talking about? If I were to go up to Donald Trump and grab Donald Trump's crotch and try to kiss Donald Trump, I would go to jail. I would be arrested. That's called sexual assault. It is a crime. Okay? It's a crime. You can't do that. You have somebody running for president of the United States who has confessed on tape to committing sex crimes, and people are talking about it as if there's something wrong with the language. We're talking about him using lewd speech. I don't care about the speech. I've heard those words before. What I care about is the activity, the language, the deeds that he is describing. He is describing sexual assault. He is describing being a sexual predator. And we're worrying about the words he used? If he left the words out and described the same conduct, it's still terrible. So we have to deal with this in an honest way. Second of all, can you imagine if Barack Obama, let's just be honest now, is he supposed to be running for president? Let's not lower the standard for this man. What if Barack Obama had 5 children by 3 different women? Let's just start with that. Obama had to be perfect beyond perfect to even be considered to be president. This man has 5 kids by 3 different women. If he was a brother, they would be talking about all the breakdown of the black family and all this sort of stuff. What's wrong with this man? Second of all, can you imagine if Barack Obama had come out and said, or had been caught on video talking about he's grabbing P words. I don't want to offend anybody, but he's grabbing people's crotches. He can kiss anybody he wants to. He's a star. He's a celebrity. He can do whatever he wants to. They like it. It would be over. We would be talking about the breakdown of values and what's wrong with black men and black male violence and all that sort of stuff. And yet, if we're going to be real about it, if we're going to tell the truth about it, white male sexual violence is always hiding in plain sight. Slavery was a massive, continued 2 or 3 century long exercise in white male sexual violence, but we don't talk about it that way. We always worry about when some scary black threat, hiding around a bush or in a corner. But most women who are sexually assaulted by somebody talking like Donald Trump. This is exactly what 90+% of sexual assault walks like, looks like, and talks like, especially if you're white. This is your number one nightmare, somebody acting like this. I have not heard this man called a thug. I have not heard him called a sex criminal. I have not heard him called anything except someone who spoke in a lewd manner. These words might offend you. Listen, it's 2016. Those words are all over the place. If you got kids and they're on YouTube, they hear those words all the time. That's not the problem. The problem is the deeds. The problem is the conduct. The problem are the things he is doing, and the idea that this is somehow the law and order candidate. Let's be very, very clear. You want to get deep with it? Let's get deep with it. This man wanted 5 young men, African-American men in New York, the Central Park 5, not to be convicted, not to be in prison, but to be executed for doing what? For doing what? Committing a sex crime, which it turned out that DNA evidence showed they are completely, utterly, and totally innocent of. The very same day that this fool is out here getting busted with this videotape, the same day he's telling people that he thinks that these 5 innocent young men are actually guilty. You missed that because there's so much going on with this lunatic. That these 5 innocent young men who spent years and years in prison, in part because he whipped up so much hatred against them in New York City. He says those people are guilty, and yet he's innocent. Notice how you can see criminality with young black men, innocent young black men, still seen as criminal by him and by others. And yet here is a sexual predator hiding in plain sight on his way to the White House, and nobody is calling him a criminal. Nobody is calling him a thug. Nobody is pointing out that the behavior that he is describing is unlawful. Then, if you want to get really deep with it, look at how the term super predator, because I'm mad at everybody tonight, super predator was being used, yes, by the Clintons and by others, including by some African Americans, all through the 90s. And yet you have a super predator running for president. What's more of a super predator than somebody who uses his power, his position, his physical strength to impose himself on women? Listen, if Donald Trump were an NBA player, hey, if Donald Trump were Tiger Woods, this would be completely, now everybody, oh, I'm appalled. I wonder why his apology doesn't seem to be very effective. Perhaps if he were to apologize in a more forthright way, I wonder, maybe some of the Republicans are going, I wonder if he'll drop out. I wonder if he's going to go to jail. How about that? Can we talk about that? Now, months ago, you had people who were coming forward and calling him the groper and this sort of stuff. And unfortunately, his kids came out and tried to defend him. Now, here's the problem. If you know you're dirty and you're doing dirt, then say, listen, I'm dirty, I did dirt, I don't do dirt no more. That would be sane. That would be rational. That would make some kind of sense. He doesn't do that. I love women, I respect women. All these people out here are just saying this stuff about me, and it's wrong. And then he gets Ivanka out there. My dad's not a groper, he's not a groper, he's not a groper. And he's bragging about being a groper on a hot mic. Now where are you going to go? It doesn't make any sense. So let me get back to my president, Barack Obama. This man had to be perfect beyond perfect beyond perfect. And so they had to make up stuff about him. They make up that he is a terrorist, that he wasn't born here, and all this sort of stuff. This man has gone through 3 marriages, and please do not forget, when he is on the air talking about all this stuff, and not just talking about quote unquote, straying in his marriage, talking about sexually assaulting people. This is 3 months into his new marriage. This is a remarkable development, but the way that it's being talked about. Don't forget, you had Richard Sherman. Don't forget Richard Sherman, a Stanford-educated African-American athlete who all he did was spike a football and talk a little trash. And we spent 8 weeks talking about, is he a thug? And calling Richard Sherman, a Stanford-educated top athlete who all he did was spike a football, he's a thug. That word thug is interesting because you would think that if he's a thug, if spiking a football and talking some crap makes you a thug, what is Donald Trump? But you don't hear that word because it's become a racialized word. Somebody said that his wife was pregnant at the time. This is deep. The other thing is, when you talk about and when you think about the situation that we find ourselves in now, The racism, listen, people, oh, well, why these guys bring up race all the time, et cetera, et cetera. White privilege is amazing. And by the way, let's talk about male privilege. Let's talk about heterosexual privilege. What if Hillary Clinton was going around talking about grabbing folks' crotches? I mean, if it's all even, if sexism is, don't play the gender card, don't play the race card, that's just, we're sick of hearing that from you guys. Quit complaining. Okay, fine. If everything's even, Steven, what if Hillary Clinton was running around grabbing folks' crotches? What would we be having this conversation, or would she be on the first ship to Mars? Okay? So, male or female crotches. So, we are in a world, it's not double standards. You're in quadruple, quintuple, exponential standards. I don't even know the math. I need a class. I need some calculus to figure out the number of double stuff that's going on. No black man in America could be in this situation talking about, I'm looking at TV. No black man in America could be in this situation without the entire universe coming down on the whole black community, number one. And number two, no woman can even think about going around grabbing nobody's crotches and bragging about it, male or female. So this is where we are, and I'm frustrated because all year long you have seen the presumption of criminality for young black men. And no matter what you do, if you slightly, he should have just given up the cigarettes. He shouldn't have looked this way, shouldn't look that way. He's a thug. He's a criminal. What's the cop supposed to do? Kill him. And then you have a confession to a sex crime by a prominent person, and nobody even sees it as a crime. They just see it as profanity. That's all they see. They just say, he said he used lewd language. It's not the language. What if he had said it in a nice way? What if he had used, some clinical term for what he was grabbing against somebody's will? Well, then is it better? You cannot see. This is why poor people, they steal something. It's class too. Class involved too. It's poor people. If they steal something, they go to prison forever. But if you're rich, you can steal on Wall Street your whole life, and nobody's mad. See, if you're poor and you use some, you hit a blunt on the street corner, go to prison. But yacht clubs, country clubs, Ivy League schools, they're doing drugs all the time. Don't ever see a police officer. This is why we are upset. This is why people are marching. This is why people have to say Black Lives Matter. It's not just the hyper criminality of African Americans. It's the presumption of innocence and non-criminality of white Americans, no matter what crazy thing they confess to. This is not an accusation. This dude is confessing. So I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I'm furious. This is ridiculous. If Donald Trump were black, he'd be up under the prison, and the word thug would be all over the internet, all over the TV. It would be a wrap. And yet, he's still somehow going to be treated as somebody engaged in frat boy behavior or locker room behavior. What frat boy behavior are black men allowed to engage in? What locker room conversation are black men allowed to engage in before they get called criminals? I'm done for now.